Greetings from LA, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our journeys, our discussions, our discoveries, and our explorations with respect to the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2023. And this brings me to a very special release of a very special film, or I should say set of films. The film here is, well, the release is designated Spine number 549. And so this is a work which actually already exists in the Criterion Collection under a really strong Blu-ray release, which is part of itself a previously released set, a collector set, which is a very classic set. But this time we have the film now being re-released again at Spine number 549, but this time employing the 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo edition format, and also including another film. And so what I'm referring to is the work, which is described as being from the year 1971, and this is directed by the director who is Peter Bogdanovich, and the name of this work is The Last Picture Show. And also included in this release is the work which is directed by Peter Bogdanovich and is from the year 1990, which is TEXASVILLE. This is the work, the 1971 work. This work is one of the most amazing films of the American cinematic landscape of the 20th century. It is a work which is described as being from the director, Peter Bogdanovich, early on in his career, quite early on in his career. And we also have the screenplay by Larry McMurtry and by Peter Bogdanovich, based upon the work by Larry McMurtry, the novel by McMurtry, and production designer Polly Platt. And we have among its iconic cast great performers such as Cloris Leachman and Jeff Bridges and Timothy Bottoms and Eileen Brennan, Ellen Burstyn, Sybil Shepherd, Ben Johnson, Randy Quaid, and others. Right? Right. So Timothy Bottoms, Jeff Bridges, Sybil Shepherd, Cloris Leachman, Eileen Brennan, Ellen Burstyn, Ben Johnson, Randy Quaid, yes, and many others. This is the work which is The Last Picture Show. The Last Picture Show did emerge in a previous Blu-ray release, which is what I have here from the Criterion Collection. This was one of the sleeved individual compartments that made up a larger whole, which was this great Blu-ray set, America Lost and Found, the BBS story. And The Last Picture Show is part of this set. That's 549, and it's a great Blu-ray set. And if you're interested, there it is, just in case you are interested. So The Last Picture Show was and is part of this great set, but now we have The Last Picture Show made available in this individual release with the plastic case and a slightly different cover art. That's still very much a key moment in the film, where it's meant to recall a very important moment in the film between two of the members of the cast. And so this is a reemergence of this film in the Criterion Collection physical media catalog, making it in an individual release using the plastic casing, and also employing the 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo edition format, as I mentioned. So we'll talk a little bit about the presentation somewhat later in this video. Also, what makes this release very special, and I'll just say it right off the bat here, what makes it very special is it of course includes the film, The Last Picture Show. And unlike any previous Criterion releases that I'm aware of, this new release includes the work, which is from 1990, also directed by Peter Bogdanovich, and also starring most of the people that I mentioned, plus some others. From 1990, directed by Peter Bogdanovich, based upon the novel by Larry McMurtry, and starring Jeff Bridges and Sybil Shepherd and Cloris Leachman, Timothy Bottoms, and also Annie Potts and Randy Quaid and others. And that film is from 1990, and it's Texasville, the sequel to The Last Picture Show, is also included here, courtesy of this new Criterion release. And it has its own disc. It's on Blu-ray, on the second of the Blu-ray discs. This set, therefore, is a multi-disc set. It has 3 discs. One 4K UHD disc, which has The Last Picture Show, and then a Blu-ray disc, which has The Last Picture Show and some supplements, a lot of supplements, in fact. And then we have another Blu-ray disc, which has Texasville, different versions of Texasville, plus some supplements that are linked with Texasville. So I'll try over the course of this video to talk a little bit about all of those points to the best of my ability, but just let it be known that already you are talking about an incredible release. It is an incredible release, and the fact that we have the 2 versions of Texasville, what's referred to as the theatrical cut in color, and then we have the director's cut, which is somewhat longer and in black and white, and now made available in this courtesy of this Criterion release. It is, I'm going to let you know right now, it's a remarkable journey. This is a remarkable journey. So I'm going to try to talk a little bit about each of these points going forward. So bear with me. I know I'm going to go all over the place as I usually do, so I apologize for this, but I just want to let you know just how excited I am for this, and I've had the opportunity of watching these discs a number of times through already, and I've always been a fan of this work, The Last Picture Show, but now it's given me a new lease, a new outlook on viewing this work and these works, in fact, in the context also of Peter Bogdanovich's filmography and biography and life. And I didn't realize just how much of Peter Bogdanovich's own life and sensibilities are infused within these works. And so that makes it, I think, all the more special and all the more compelling and captivating. And what a magical, memorable set of films these are. So let us now speak a little bit about The Last Picture Show, and then we'll talk a little bit more about Texasville going forward. Okay, so let us now turn our attention to the main feature, so to speak, which is The Last Picture Show. And as I mentioned, this is the work which is described as being from 1971, directed by Peter Bogdanovich, based upon the novel by Larry McMurtry. The screenplay is credited to Larry McMurtry and Peter Bogdanovich, and then starring, as I mentioned, Timothy Bottoms, Sybil Shepherd, Jeff Bridges, Randy Quaid, Cloris Leachman, Eileen Brennan, Ellen Burstyn, and others, Ben Johnson, and others. It's such a great cast and such an iconic classic film, and it is a work which is about a small town in Texas, and it has a anarene and occupying or being part of the community of this small town community. We already meet from the outset a number of key players, and Sonny and Dwayne, Timothy Bottoms and Jeff Bridges' character, and they have a type of bond and a type of friendship, and also undergoing and experiencing aspects of youth and exuberance and growing up and growing pains and coming of age and meeting other people, having friendships, having intimate relationships, exploring ideas and aspects about their own emerging sexual interests and urges and curiosities, especially when dealing with other people in the community that they meet, and indeed we also meet. And those include other characters such as JC, the Sybil Shepherd character, and also Ben Johnson's performance here as Sam, or Sam the Lion, who adds a type of avuncular sagely wisdom that may not always be appreciated on the spot or on its face, but there is a sense of type of a quiet sense of what one might call dignity in the face of a number of very famous monologues where we have Ben Jonson very, I think, quietly, triumphantly, speaking of certain moments of his life and his past, people that he might have encountered that were very important or are very important to him that may have slipped away, chances that might have slipped away, choices that he might have made, but based on certain things, he ended up being where he is. And I think that's also a distilled, or that's a great distillation of a number of the various aspects and subplots and characters that we meet and their various stations in life or walks of life or positionings based on who they are, their generation, their age, their situation in terms of family or occupation or job and the like. And so this is a great cross-section of a community of various walks of life and generations. And so what's fascinating, therefore, is that we see a number of characters, like I alluded to, like Sam, the Ben Jonson character, who may be somewhat older in years, and so he is taking the position of a type of quiet authority, but also looking back on a life that was lived, and a sense of quiet regret or sadness seems to be permeating a lot of his dialogue. And also we have people of maybe one generation younger, who are now, say, into their adult years and maybe having families of their own, but also seemingly trying to make sense of certain choices that they have made or their own relationships. And I refer to characters such as the characters portrayed by Ellen Burstyn and Cloris Leachman as an example, or as examples. They each have their own set of situations that they are trying to face in terms of relationships, in terms of marriage and or family. The story of Ellen Burstyn and her relationship with uh, uh, certain characters, other characters, certain men in her life, for example, and how that may have a role to play in her own relationship with JC, the Sybil Shepherd character as well, and their relationship in terms of parent-child, familial closeness, but also having the potential of being broken up due to certain aspects of say, attraction and intimate relationships that, again, have the potential of driving them apart. And we'll have to see the continuity of their own, say, plots or subplots to see if that indeed happens, or if there are other things that might occur along the way in her life and indeed their lives. And that brings us also to another character, maybe similarly stationed, that being the character of Cloris Leachman. This is Ruth and her situation and life and relationship, but also her feeling of maybe self-worth or lack thereof, and how she meets and becomes involved in other characters' lives that may or may not be within her immediate circle or her immediate station, and how that affects her own livelihood and her own sense of self and worth, especially in the context of this town of Anarene. And that brings us to a connection that may or may not be had between her character and others, and some of the other characters of the younger generations, of the youthful generation that, on the one hand, seems to be showcasing a sense of exuberance and youth and sort of carefree abandon on the one hand, but then also are holding or indicating or carrying within them some kind of yearning or some kind of seeking curiosity and need for a type of connection or a need for a type of a recognition and the like. And I'm speaking about, in particular, the characters portrayed by Timothy Bottoms, Sonny, and Jeff Bridges, Duane, and I mentioned Sybil Shepherd. JC. And also there are other characters that we meet too, Randy Quaid's character, etc. But these characters, and in particular these three, especially as we see them relate to other members of the community, seem to be another key component of many key components that are running loose and running wild, and indeed running in their own humane and beautifully rendered three-dimensional way. In the case of this so-called younger generation, we see them growing up. It's a sort of a time in their lives just before maybe moving on. They're also sexually curious, and they are seeking some kind of maybe satisfaction, um, seeking their own maybe exploring their own sexual identities, and that means also trying to have relationships with other people, people that they know from early on, or maybe people that they're meeting for the first time. And so here we have this idea of a type of adventurousness, but also stepping into the unknown. There are some big steps that these young characters in particular are being confronted with, big questions, choices that they are asked to make. And these choices might seem on the surface to be very everyday and mundane, but in fact, they are huge, huge choices that they are making, or they are asked to make. Whether they, for instance, are asked to, say, engage with a type of pool party that may or may not be something that a certain character is willing to attend or to be a part of, or maybe it has something to do with stepping into the bounds of an illicit, seemingly sort of from the community standpoint anyway, a sort of secret love affair or a romance that may have long-term implications for everyone concerned, or maybe it's the idea of trying to make amends for certain regrets or certain choices that have affected other people in the community, and that leads to senses of guilt and senses of a type of confusion, all the while trying to live their lives amongst their group, amongst the kinship that is formed within their peers, and also trying to have fun and listen to music and be part of the life, and just try to make things, try to understand things in this world where things are very confusing, and choices that confront people aren't always the easiest choices, and they have potentially long-term ramifications. And what's so fascinating about, say, the stories of Sonny and Dwayne and JC and others is that we see also their, say, younger generation positioning stations in life. And we also see the older generations, in particular, say Ellen Burstyn's character, or Cloris Leachman's character, or Ben Johnson's character, or Eileen Brennan's character, etc. And we see their, say, positions in slightly older generational levels, and we see how choices that they have made in their lives already in the past have affected them in the moment right now. And we see the parallel of similar choices that confront our younger generational characters. And we see a type of potential of an echo of history, a type of repetition that may also have long-term ramifications. And it's all it potentially cyclical, or there's a possibility of breaking the cycle. So that I think that way of approaching the tapestry and the networking and the lattice work of this community of Anarene. It's called Anarene here in the film Last Picture Show, but we'll talk a little bit about the actual town, which is a part of the great supplements that accompany the Last Picture Show, and indeed Texasville as well. But Archer City is the name of the actual place, but it's given the name Anarene, and in fact in the novel, it's I understand it's a different name altogether, but. In any event, as it takes place within this town, which is it's in a certain positioning in the United States. There are cultural values that are reflected in certain aspects of the decor and background and foreground, for that matter, and also there is a sense of the small town nature of the place, and that perhaps one day people might be asked to move out or move on, and to live lives beyond the borders of the town, or maybe they will stay. And therefore, it makes for, I think, very compelling and visually stunning viewing, the fact that we see the lives of these people and their psychological stories linked very closely, and perhaps in sort of visual terms and metaphorical terms, linked very closely with the status quo of the town itself. And so this is therefore a humanely rich, very funny, very cheeky film that has also moments of true tenderness that seem to just come out of nowhere, and with the very delicate turn of a camera, or the very nature of how sunlight shines through clouds and hits the face of a character as the character is giving this monologue about his past. And no one else seems to be listening except us, the viewer. Or maybe characters that seem to be really lost and bereft in a world of doubt and concern and regret, needing to find some kind of solace and trying to find some kind of answer, but not being able to connect. And they may express their frustration outward aggressively, or they may express it inwardly in terms of their own further demeaning of their own sense of self-worth, etc. Or perhaps the opposite is true. Maybe they feel this tinge of rejection, but it's how they bounce back, or how they try to bounce back, which may form the key to furthering the key relationships in their lives. And so I think there's a bunch of ups and downs, the ebbs and flows of human life, as it were. The heart beats in wonderful and painful and sad and also quite poignant ways, all at once. And it's many sets of heartbeats because it's many sets of characters within this community. And we are asked to view this world within the framework of this community, but also we are also permitted to share and explore and be part of these stories on an individual, humane, and human level. What a powerful, and it continues to be a powerful work. And under the guidance, direction of Peter Bogdanovich and many of his collaborators and artistic collaborators here, such as Larry McMurtry, such as Polly Platt, and the performances here are really top-notch. And I should point out, too, that there is, when one watches the supplements, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, there are moments, or there's a way of watching this film, and I never realized this until I got more into the supplements, but just how much of the actual lives of the people that are making this film, how much of this is infused into the film itself, in terms of the background story, in terms of the production stories, in terms of people and their lives and what was happening to their lives at the time of making this film. Peter Bogdanovich and aspects of his biography as he was making this film. Polly Platt as well, in terms of their relationship, and then what happened to their relationship when Peter Bogdanovich met and began working with Sybil Shepherd on this work, and then how that affected the lives of Peter Bogdanovich and Sybil Shepherd. Not to mention the personal feelings that seem to have occurred on set, as expressed by people like in what was happening with Ellen Burstyn, and also Cloris Leachman, and also Timothy Bottoms, and just the personal lives also very much affecting and being part of the art that was being created here. So there's so much of life. I don't know how to explain it except to say there's so much of life that is here, both on screen but also behind the camera. And I think that makes a viewing of The Last Picture Show all the more poignant, and especially looking back. This was released in 1971, and it was a huge critical success and commercial success, and it was an all-time classic, and I think recognized immediately so upon its release, and it still is that way. But there is a very special power now looking back on it, and understanding that critical acclaim, which is still there, but also understanding the idea of looking at this film, looking back as a type of maybe yearning for nostalgia, something to do with the past, something to do with regret, or remembering, having fond memories of things that are no longer there. Things are changed now, but we can always look back. And indeed, that is definitely the case in this very heartwarming, heart-wrenching way. An all-time classic, The Last Picture Show. The Criterion Collection has released The Last Picture Show once again, courtesy of this new re-release in 2023, and this is the 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo edition, and we have 3 discs. And so we have the excuse me here. Yes, we have 3 discs here, and it looks kind of like this, or not kind of, it looks like this. I've already taken the liberty of removing the booklet, so the booklet would be housed here with little plastic hooks to hold the booklet in place on this side. But we have 1 disc here, which is the second Blu-ray, which holds Texasville, and we'll talk about that later. But on this side, we have the 2 discs, the Blu-ray disc #1 and the 4K UHD disc, which is for the Last Picture Show. And I should point out that the Last Picture Show, again, is the one that's going to be made available either on the 4K UHD or the Blu-ray, with Texasville being made available on the Blu-ray, Blu-ray #2. With respect to the master, I should point out that for the Last Picture Show, it says in the stapled, very robust, lots of pages booklet, which I love, it states on page 17 about the master, the Last Picture Show is presented in its original aspect ratio of 1.85 to 1. The new digital master on the 4K Ultra HD disc was created from the 35mm original camera negative. The 4K wet-gate scanning and digital image restoration was conducted at Cineric Inc., New York. The original monaural soundtrack was remastered from the magnetic track by Deluxe Audio Services in Hollywood, following original work by Chase Audio. The digital master on the Blu-ray, supervised by director Peter Bogdanovich, was created in 2009 from a 35mm fine-grained master positive, which was scanned in high definition on a Spirit 4K data scanner. The feature is presented in Dolby Vision HDR, high dynamic range, on the 4K UHD disc, and high definition SDR, standard dynamic range, on the Blu-ray disc. I have seen the film on the Blu-ray, the older Blu-ray, again from the box set here, which is a great box set, and it was a great Blu-ray, and it was the director's cut of the film, Last Picture Show, and so it was my go-to default method of watching the film, The Last Picture Show. And then when I put the 4K disc into the machine upon this recent release, I was amazed, blown away. While the Blu-ray, I think, is incredible, I think there's something about how the 4K is rendered and looks in terms of because there's so much to do with. I mean, there are many interior scenes, and I think the interior scenes are done a lot of great justice with the 4K and the Blu-ray as well. It's always looked great on the Blu-ray, but there's just something about the but I mentioned the interior scenes. I think the interior scenes are rendered quite well, but to my eyes and to my ears, I think for me, one place where I can note a lovely type of 4K rendering that I think also helps to really allow me to even more, or even in this new way, further engage with the film, is the outdoor scenes. I mean, there's some moments where you can see outlines of the trees, or just feel the sunlight through them, or the way that you see certain things in the distance. I mean, one of the things too that's very important about this film and the black and white photography is what's known as sort of deep focus, or things that are held sharply in focus in the foreground, but also at the same time there are different objects in separate parts of the screen that are in the background. And so there's considerable geographical distance between that which is in the foreground of a shot and that which is in the background of the shot, but they are both held with the same or similarly level degree of sharp focus. And so I think this type of aspect is preserved, or was always preserved so well in the earlier Blu-ray, which is replicated here, by the way. And my understanding is that to my eyes, the Blu-ray presentation of this release is that of the older Blu-ray. But when I put the 4K disc in, gosh, there's a kind of crispness there. I think is so alluring and so sharp and so engaging. Oh, it's great. I was very impressed with this. So the Blu-ray is great, don't get me wrong. The Blu-ray is great, and it always has been great, and it continues to be great for the Last Picture Show. So if you have the Blu-ray, I think you're in very good hands with that. But there's something very magical about watching this on the 4K, and there are these noticeable, I wouldn't call them supremely large changes per se, but there are these maybe soft changes that I think, or soft differences that I think really help to make the film such a rewarding experience to watch. It was always a rewarding experience to watch, so don't get me wrong, but for those who are interested in the Blu-ray, or excuse me, for those who have the Blu-ray, you're in very great hands. But for those who are interested in experiencing this possibly in the 4K format, you will not be disappointed. You will not be disappointed. So now let us speak about what options are available in terms of supplements and commentary tracks. And once again, I draw your attention to the fact that this had been released earlier on the earlier Blu-ray release. And so we have the supplements and the commentary tracks that were made available in this earlier Blu-ray release also being carried over here. So this is really great. So first up is the audio commentary track availability. Please note that there are 2 audio commentary tracks. There are always 2 audio commentary tracks available, so that's still continue on, which is great. And those 2 audio commentary tracks are available when you watch the film The Last Picture Show on the 4K UHD disc, which is what I have on the screen now, or if you put the Blu-ray of The Last Picture Show in Blu-ray disc number 1. So you have your choice of watching the film on either of such formats, and then whatever format you choose, if you seek to listen to one of the 2 commentary tracks, you can do so. So the commentary tracks, these are, I think, classic commentary tracks. They do have certain overlaps in certain ways, but they're also speaking about different, or they take similar scenarios or situations, and they go in different directions. And so they are similar and yet distinct. And so I think they're both definitely worth listening to. They're fantastic. The first commentary track is called Directors and Actors, and it's described as such. This commentary track, recorded exclusively for the Criterion Collection in 1991, features director Peter Bogdanovich and actors Sybil Shepherd, Randy Quaid, Cloris Leachman, and Frank Marshall. To listen to the commentary while viewing the movie, press the audio key on your remote at any time. So that's the first commentary track, and it is from 1991. It's one of those commentary tracks where you have each of the participants and their voice or their commentary, and they're not in the same room, but their parts are edited together to form the commentary track as a whole. So I would say, for the most part, the commentary comments from Peter Bogdanovich are perhaps the most prevalent on this. But where the scenes have something to do with the performer, such as Frank Marshall, then the comments will come up for Randy Quaid. When certain scenes involving Randy Quaid come up, his comments will appear, such as, Randy Quaid's acting career, in a sense, could be said to have started from his work on the Last Picture Show. And he does mention this, and he does talk about his feelings about working on this professionally made film, being on the set, being nervous, etc. So it's really fascinating, especially considering what happened to Randy Quaid and his career after this. And so you to see him in this role, by the way, it's another great example of why this film is so great. So you get the great comments from Randy Quaid. Also, Cloris Leachman. Cloris Leachman plays such a key role and one of the great performances of this film. Her character is going through a lot, and she speaks here about certain moments of emotional intensity, and also working with Peter Bogdanovich in that way. And there's a certain peculiar, peculiar is not the right word, but there's certain ways in which he was working that was really at the end trying to inform the performance as well. So really interesting details about their working relationship. But Cloris Leachman here is a phenom. The performance is just off the charts, amazing. So it's great to hear some of her comments. We get to actually hear from Cloris Leachman also in other parts of the supplement. So it's good to see that as well. So that's there. Sybil Shepherd. Some of her, when her scenes appear, then we hear some of her comments as well. Her contribution to this film, and just the way in which people respond to her, react to her, are affected by her, and I should say both on screen and also behind the camera. I mean, uh, uh, this is one of the, again, most iconic roles in 20th century cinema. JC, Sybil Shepherd. I mean, she affects a lot of people in this film, and she is affected by a lot of people in this film as well. And there is an innocence and charm to her performance, and I think she remarks about how this is essentially her first role as well, and she wasn't a professional actor, and she had been in modeling, and that's how Peter Bogdanovich had first found a magazine cover, which is now a very famous story about how that initiated their first meeting, Peter Bogdanovich and Sybil Shepherd, and the rest, as they say, is history. And she too acknowledges this, and Sybil Shepherd acknowledges too how much there was a lot of emotion involved also behind the camera, and having to do with the way she was interacting with Jeff Bridges, Timothy Bottoms as well, and Peter Bogdanovich. So, and there's some scenes that are very intense, very shocking for the day, involving aspects of sexuality and nudity. So, and she talks about that with a frankness and honesty, which I think is really real wonderful. So Sybil Shepherd's comments are here great. And then Peter Bogdanovich, I mentioned, you hear him perhaps the most throughout this commentary track. And he has so much to say, and I love Peter Bogdanovich's delivery and the way he speaks, and he has this casual air and demeanor, which I think is it's so welcoming, and it's not at all threatening, I should say, as a listener. But then you enter into the world of Peter Bogdanovich speak, and you realize that he has so much to say, whether it's about his films or about other filmmakers. And he talks here about little details like, oh, this is like Orson. This I got a little bit of inspiration from Citizen Kane here, and working with say animals on set, and there's dogs, and how that led into a little anecdote about John Ford working with Ben Johnson, working with these Cloris Leachman, and the Academy Awards attention that this got after the fact, and the great performances. Talking about working with Jeff Bridges, Timothy Bottoms. Details about the town, Archer City, and how maybe some aspects of the actual town's community may not have been wholly receptive positively to the idea of having this film being made, but others perhaps were very supportive. And so working in this environment, and it became Anna Reen in the film. And also Larry McMurtry's story, being introduced to the novel, talking about how he got first found it, but maybe then he didn't immediately take to it as a possible film project for him until it was introduced to him a little bit later by an acquaintance that he also recounts here. So there, it's great, and just details too about every scene, the frenzy word. This is a great commentary track, a classic commentary track. He also talks too about links to TEXASVILLE. I mean, this was a commentary track from 1991, so TEXASVILLE had already been made and released. So it's wonderful to get those details here. Also, I should point out that the Criterion Collection release had always been of the director's cut, or it's known as the director's cut of The Last Picture Show. Some of you may know there was a theatrical cut, but then which had to be, for certain reasons that are explained in the commentary track and also in some of the supplements, had to be under 2 hours. So a lot of scenes were excised. But then the opportunity after the initial release was given to Peter Bogdanovich and company to put back some of the scenes. And so there was a slightly elongated version, which now is the version that is courtesy of the Criterion release. I should note that for The Last Picture Show, we don't have the theatrical release of the film. We have only the director's cut. I think if you're interested in trying to find the theatrical cut, I know it's available in some aspects of physical media lore and history. There are comments during the commentary track where Peter Bogdanovich just note where certain additions were made or differences made, etc. So in case you're interested, I think maybe if I were to take the opportunity now, I would have liked to have seen maybe the it would have been interesting to have had the director's cut and the theatrical cut of the Last Picture Show being made available for this. But I don't think at the end of the day it hurts the release overall that the theatrical cut is not included, because, at least for me anyway, I will always go with the director's cut. Understanding what the theatrical cut had and didn't have, I can see, at least for me, just how much I would always go with the director's cut. So it would have been interesting to have included, but I'm okay with it not being included, the theatrical cut of the Last Picture Show. But you get glimpses of that, and if you're not able to watch the theatrical cut, then at least you have places like this commentary track number 1 to help guide you in terms of what differences are there, if any. So that's the first commentary track. But next, the second commentary track is with director Peter Bogdanovich himself, and this is described as: recorded in 2009, this commentary track features director Peter Bogdanovich. And so it is about almost 20 years difference, not quite, almost 20 years difference between the earlier 91's commentary track and this commentary track from 2009. There are some areas that are covering similar ground. And so he does tread or retread certain anecdotes that we might have heard in, say, other sources like the documentary or the commentary. But that's okay. That's okay. It's always great to hear a Peter Bogdanovich production anecdote. And he's, again, very honest, very sincere. And there are others. There are ways, too, in which this commentary track maybe can be said to be complementing what it is we heard in the commentary track number 1. Here he talks a little bit more about the musical choices and how it was kind of the found music, the radio, that became the musical landscape of the film. Also, he did touch upon this in the earlier commentary track, but here too we have certain choices about film quotations. You know, it's in the title, The Last Picture Show. Also, films that are shown, going to the movie theaters, quotations of films. This is very important in the context of what the characters are undergoing, and also Peter Bogdanovich is a cinema lover, a cineast. And so quotations to, say, The Father of the Bride, Red River, etc., and how those are different from what might have occurred or what might have been taking place in the original Larry McMurtry novel. So, and talks too about a detail that I hadn't realized until I heard the 2009 commentary track, was the reason why the town is called Anarene in the film, starting with the letter A. And so that, because the actual city name is Archer City, but the town name is Archer City. But that's interesting. So, and Frank Marshall too. He mentions a little bit about Frank Marshall, number 11. And so, and what I like too about this is that you have, so the commentary tracks, commentary track number 2 and then commentary track number 1. You are in for a wonderful cinema treat going with either commentary track. My suggestion would be to listen to both if you have the opportunity to watch the film. I mean, this film is just welcoming multiple viewings, and so if you have the opportunity to watch the film again and again and again, please watch it with commentary track 1, and then on another occasion watch it with commentary track 2. Again, you will not be disappointed. Next up, let's talk about the supplements that can be found linked with the film The Last Picture Show. And so what I've done now is I've taken out the 4K UHD disc from the player. I have inserted Blu-ray disc number 1, which contains The Last Picture Show. Once again, the 4K UHD disc has the film and the commentary tracks, which is what we've spoken about. The Blu-ray disc has the film and then the commentary tracks and then the supplements. So the supplements will be found on the Blu-ray disc itself, not on the 4K disc. But the film and the commentary tracks are constant with either choice that you make. Although I should point out one little detail before I forget. The commentary tracks are available on either 4K disc or the Blu-ray disc, yes. But you look closely, and when you select it, you didn't get this, I think, on the 4K disc, but you do on the Blu-ray disc, which is the index. You get an index or chapter headings for the Blu-ray disc commentary track menu or submenu. You didn't get that for the 4K UHD menu, but anyway, and that's true for both the directors and actors commentary track from 91 and then the director-only commentary track from 2009. So you also get an index, chapters, headings. So if you want to jump to a particular chapter and with a little note as to what might be spoken about in that chapter in the commentary track. So you get that. So that's interesting. But let's move to the supplements. And so we have the supplements, which we had seen on the earlier Blu-ray release of The Last Picture Show, but we see them again here. So if you haven't had the opportunity to watch The Last Picture Show supplements, now's your chance. These are great. The first supplement is The Last Picture Show, A Look Back. And you press the button and you've got the explanatory note, which I love. And it says, this hour-long 1999 documentary by Laurent Bouzereau features interviews with directors Peter Bogdanovich, actors Sybil Shepherd, Timothy Bottoms, Jeff Bridges, Ellen Burstyn, Cloris Leachman, Frank Marshall, and author Larry McMurtry. This is approximately 1 hour and 4 minutes. So, and this is, I understand from 1999. This is a great documentary, and Laurent Bouzereau, very famous in this field of creation of during this time, in particular creation of these supplements on the various DVD releases at the time, or physical media releases of the time. And so to have this carried over again now in 2023, that's a great thing. Talking about adapting the book, the McMurtry book, talking about casting choices, what could have been, who might have played the roles, but the roles that ended up being portrayed by the actors that we see on screen. Working with legends and legends of screen and theater as well, and so working with people like Eileen Brennan, who's great performance. I love Eileen Brennan's performance here, and also working with Ben Johnson, of course, very famous, highly lauded critically in terms of award season, etc. And Cloris Leachman, of course, mentioned. Also speaking too about and working with Jeff Bridges, Timothy Bottoms, Sybil Shepherd, Randy Quaid, etc. And then Frank Marshall too, having a small role as well. It's small in terms of relative running time. It's very important actually in the context of some of the subplots, and especially the subplot involving Cloris Leachman's character. But and also the reasons why black and white was chosen for the photography. And he asked Peter Bogdanovich, talking about the choice of this, and referring to advice received from Orson Welles about depth of field and capturing that in black and white, and talking too about a lot of the personal details that occurred during the making of this film. So, for instance, with Peter Bogdanovich, a lot of things happened with his own life throughout the making of this film, in terms of his relationship with Polly Platt, his relationship with Sybil Shepherd, and the untimely passing of his own father during the production of this, etc. So, a lot of things were happening. And also stories about the editing process, and what the editing credit ended up being, and also the reasons behind the creation of the theatrical cut, which was again just shy of 2 hours. He says 119 minutes here, but then the opportunity to create what is now known as the director's cut, etc. So in any event, what a great documentary it is. So it's great to have it included again. So if you haven't had a chance to watch this documentary, please do so. It's really great. Next up, we have a discussion with filmmaker Peter Bogdanovich, and it says, this 2009 Q&A between Peter Bogdanovich and documentary filmmaker Laurent Bouzereau looks at Bogdanovich's favorite directors and inspirations, his rise from writer to director, and the experience of making The Last Picture Show. So this is from 2009. This is approximately 13 minutes. It says a Q&A, but it's a kind of interview, and it has questions, and then title card questions, and then going into Peter Bogdanovich's answers here. 13 minutes overall. It's a great set of questions, talking about maybe favorite parts of the filmmaking, talking about his early career. There's some stories and segues into stories about what is referred to as cutting in the camera, and this is in reference to a very key fight scene that occurs, and how his knowledge or lack thereof, admitted lack thereof at the time anyway, of a master shot, what that was. And so trying to understand the components of what was being shot that was going to be edited versus using a master, etc. Really, and then advice he got from people like Roger Corman, Orson Welles, and the reviews, how he handles reviews, this being considered a type of life-altering film for him for many reasons, etc. So a great interview, another great interview with Peter Bogdanovich. Whenever there's an opportunity to have an interview or to listen to an interview with Peter Bogdanovich, I'm there. So that's great. Next is, picture this. In this award-winning documentary, directed by George Hickenlooper, The Last Picture Show's director and cast returned to the town of Archer City to film the 1990 sequel Texasville, featuring interviews with director Peter Bogdanovich, actor Sybil Shepherd, Timothy Bottoms, and Jeff Bridges, writer Larry McMurtry, and citizens of Archer City. Picture This explores the dramas and conflicts that occurred on set and behind the scenes of the original film. So this is the part of the documentary, I understand, that is focusing on The Last Picture Show. And I mention that because we'll actually get another excerpt from the documentary when we get to the discussion of Texasville. But this part is the Last Picture Show centric part of this. This portion is totaling 42 minutes. This is mind-blowingly revelatory. And I mentioned, too, the idea about how I mean, it's the oft-repeated phrase, art imitates life, or perhaps maybe a better description, perhaps would be what we see in terms of the film Last Picture Show. One can understand there's so much lifeblood, there's so much of the actual lives and biographies and lived-in experiences of the people making this film. And so when you watch this film, it takes on that kind of personal importance, I think, in a manner of speaking. So, and so those details and more emerge in this. And we actually, what's so great too about this, among many of the great things about the Picture This documentary, is we also get reactions from people from the community, the actual Archer City community. And so some people are in favor and they enjoyed having the film come to their community, their small town. But other people maybe were not, or a little bit hesitant to do that. They talk a little bit about Larry McMurtry and his life and growing up, and how he may have known some of these anecdotes that are then replicated in the story, The Last Picture Show. Or maybe he was an indirect witness or something like that. So there's interesting discussion points there, and then also some very personal details emerge. I mean, Timothy Bottoms, his conversations here have a lot of weight to them, and so he speaks to about how he was so emotionally invested in a number of the scenes, in particular how he acknowledges here, and it's also mentioned elsewhere, how he fell in love with Sybil Shepherd, and how that happened during one of the key scenes between his character Sonny and then her character JC. So and also Randy Quaid and Timothy Bottoms working with Peter Bogdanovich, and Peter Bogdanovich working with other people on the cast and crew. Sometimes not always the most harmonious of working relationships. That's, I think, acknowledged on many sides. And so Peter Bogdanovich also talks too about that maybe there are some moments of contentiousness between him and maybe the actors or maybe members of the crew. And I think it's acknowledged here as trying to protect certain aspects of the performance. For example, maybe being protective of Sybil Shepherd's performance because she was coming from a place of acting inexperience, and so trying to capture that sense of innocence because maybe in this stage of being in one's first film, one might be susceptible to a lot of advice from other people that may or may not have a good overall effect on the performance. So I think, and this also is acknowledged by Sybil Shepherd in a very glowing way. There's also talk to the story about one of the famous or infamous scenes in the film involving a pool party and at the time very shocking displays of human form and nudity. And so Sybil Shepherd talks too about her feelings about whether or not to do such scene or what kinds of things she needed to do, and working with Peter Bogdanovich as well on that. And there's a little bit of a moment of contention involving a type of letter or something that she was demanding. But at the end of the day, yes, the film and the scene, the scene turns out the way it is in the film. So also talking about the Oscars and the Oscar attention that it got, talking about, I mentioned the local backlash, references to Howard Hawks, John Ford, working with Polly Platt, who is a really important professional and personal relationship with Peter Bogdanovich during this period. So, and also just the acknowledged behind the scenes drama that was occurring, and it's acknowledged by everyone about how Peter Bogdanovich and Sybil Shepherd entered into a relationship, and so that obviously affected the relationship between Peter Bogdanovich and Polly Platt. And there's a little bit of an anecdote that is showing this as as their relationship was disintegrating. But Polly Platt, I think to her credit, talks a lot about how she was really trying to still maintain this her work on the film. And I think Sybil Shepherd and Peter Bogdanovich, to their credit as well, I mean they talk about it, I think, in very frank and honest terms as well. So I think they speak about it in a way that is I mean it happened, and so these details I think are undeniable. But the people that are involved also make it part of the story and the behind the scenes. So for these and other reasons, this is intense stuff. So it's picture this: the times of Peter Bogdanovich in Archer City, Texas, and this section is approximately 42 minutes. So please check it out if you can. It's really wonderful stuff. Screen tests. Presented here are 16mm screen tests of actors featured in the Last Picture Show, including Jesse Lee Fulton, Miss Mosey, Gary Brockett, Bobby Sheen, and Helena Human, Jimmy Sue, among others. So these are screen tests that are showing some of the, say, the town folk, the members of the community. And so it's one of the key aspects of the Last Picture Show is the fact that it's shot here on location, Archer City, and many of the people that are part of this community are appear in the film in one form or another. So I think this is a great indication of that. So that's the screen tests. It's approximately 2 minutes. Then there's location footage. This is approximately 6 minutes total, and it says the Last Picture Show was based on author Larry McMurtry's recollections of his hometown of Archer City, Texas. After scouting other areas in Texas, director Peter Bogdanovich discovered that Archer City was, in fact, the perfect location for the film. Before production began, Bogdanovich sought some location footage, which is presented here without audio. And so this is, yes, it doesn't have an audio soundtrack, so it's just the images, the footage. It's great. I mean, you get the actual locations, and you see some of these locations shown up again in the film itself, so you can tell just trying to get the bearings and the feel and the ambiance. And so it's great. Again, the town as well is such a key character, such a key component of this film, so it's great to have that as well. Then there's Truffaut on the New Hollywood, and this is Francois Truffaut. It says, the following excerpt from the French television program Vive le Cinéma shows filmmaker Francois Truffaut talking about the New Hollywood and its maverick directors. The episode first aired on February 13th, 1972, and was directed by André Labat. And so this is approximately 5 minutes. We have Truffaut talking to the camera. I mean, there's one moment, it's an interesting moment, where someone comes into his office, and it feels quite charmingly staged in an interesting way. But for the most part, it's Francois Truffaut talking to the camera and speaking about his outlook on the state of what is referred to as New Hollywood cinema, or American cinema of the early 1970s. And he talks to, in reference to films like The Last Picture Show, this idea of the capturing of the sense of pessimism in U.S. in how U.S. cinema captures a sense of pessimism of history in the times, suggestions and depictions of sex and human sexuality, etc. So very fascinating. Again, The Last Picture Show had a huge impact the world over, and I think this is a great example of why that was, or the types of reactions that were being had from Francois Truffaut himself, Truffaut on the New Hollywood. And then the trailers. We have the original theatrical trailer and the re-release trailer from a few years later. So there you have it. The supplements packed to the brim, as they were before, but they are again here now. I don't notice anything new in regards to the Last Picture Show supplements for purposes of the 2023 release. So there's no 2023 supplement as far as I can tell, at least on this list. But that's okay. That's okay. What we had before and what we have now is utterly sublime. Let me say it again. It is just great. I said it before, but I'll say it again, which is before I saw the supplements, I didn't realize just how personal this film, The Last Picture Show, was and is to all the people that were involved in the making of this, the actors and the crew. It's for example, Peter Bogdanovich. I didn't realize just how personal this was. And in fact, as the years passed and they got closer towards, then revisiting this world in the context of the sequel, Texasville, that they perhaps acknowledged that it gained even more prominence to them personally, or perhaps they didn't realize just how personal this film was until many, many years after the fact. And so that is an example of where and how these supplements really shine for me. And so that when I understand, or I begin to try to appreciate just how personal it is for these people, and when I have that in my frame of reference, and when I rewatch it, it makes it even more magical and more powerful an experience watching this. So bravo, bravo. Now, if you don't mind, let us turn our attention to the second Blu-ray disc of this set. And on such second Blu-ray disc, we have the availability in two distinct versions of a work which is described as being from the year 1990. It is directed by Peter Bogdanovich, and it stars, among others, people like Jeff Bridges and Sybil Shepherd and Timothy Bottoms and Cloris Leachman and Randy Quaid and also Annie Potts, etc. This is the sequel to The Last Picture Show, which is called Texasville. And so now it comes courtesy of this Criterion Collection release. It doesn't have its own separate release, and it doesn't have its own spine number. And so, in fact, officially speaking, I think the inclusion of Texasville is considered as a type of supplement to the quote-unquote main release of this, which is The Last Picture Show. But I really want to I really want to suggest just how important this film is, Texasville. And the fact that it's being made available in this way is astonishing. We have two versions of it which are in themselves astonishing. And I should give special emphasis to what I consider to be a really great version of it, which is the director's cut, which is available right here in the black and white. The theatrical cut is in color, but the director's cut is in black and white. The director's cut is also somewhat longer in running time. It's 2 hours and 30 minutes, whereas the theatrical cut is 2 hours and 5 minutes. My personal preference, I love that. I think the theatrical cut is great, but I love the director's cut for reasons which I'll try to describe somewhat later. But let us just speak very briefly about the plot or story structure of Texasville. It is an astounding work. It's a work where we come back to this town and come back to these characters, and they are older. It is many years after the events of The Last Picture Show, in the 1980s, and we meet, or we actually focus primarily this time in the story of Texasville on the story of Dwayne, and this is the Jeff Bridges character. And so maybe unlike the film The Last Picture Show, where in that film we had various stories from the viewpoints of a number of characters, here in Texasville we can say that this film is primarily focusing in on the character of the Jeff Bridges character of Dwayne. So most, if not most, almost all of the film is from Dwayne's perspective, and he appears in almost all of the scenes. And so his perspective is very important, and he becomes a kind of main character of the work. And so everything, or in that way, it gives the appearance of things occurring, maybe how he is affected or what has happened in his life vis-a-vis the stories that were emerging with Dwayne as we saw them in The Last Picture Show. There's nothing wrong with that approach, because what that allows for, in fact, is a kind of parallel in the context of Dwayne's story, how he finds himself older, in a different station in life. Now he has a family, he has a relationship, wife and the family and children, and that extended household and various characters that we are meeting also for the first time, such as, I think very prominently, the character played by Annie Potts, and their very contentious, a hot and cold, off and on relationship, which is also one of the key plots or subplots or character arcs of this film. What that allows for is the idea of using or allowing us to have the story of Dwayne as acting on its own terms in a very wonderful follow-up of his story from the Last Picture Show, but also using his story as a prism to see, to engage with themes and moods and ideas about longing, about age, about regret, about life choices that may have been quote unquote wrong, or that might have uh, uh, led to a bad turn somewhere. How many of the characters, through his eyes, as we ourselves are being reacquainted with him, how many of the other characters seem to be very much changed or very much the same. So we do get reacquainted with, for example, Cloris Leachman's character, and where she is vis-a-vis this film versus where she was at the end, say, of the Last Picture Show. Or we do get acquainted or reacquainted with Randy Quaid's character. We do get reacquainted with Timothy Bottom's character. We do get, yes, reacquainted also with Sybil Shepherd's character, JC. And this also forms one of the very interesting arcs of this film, namely the reestablishment of a type of relationship between Dwayne and JC, and how that might be hinting at, or maybe awakening or reawakening, some kind of feeling of regret that is within Dwayne's own heart, whether it is identified as a type of longing for some kind of memory of lost love, because as we recall from the Last Picture Show, Dwayne and JC's relationship was very much a part of the aspect of romance in that film. Whether that is something of a kind of the loss, the love of one's life type of attitude that could be said to be part of Dwayne's ideas or aspects of himself, and how that affects his relationship with other people, like Annie Potts' character. Or is that really accurate? Or maybe that's an illusion. Maybe that's some kind of longing for something that is not quite right. And maybe what it is he's really longing for is something completely different. And it's that type of opportunity to look back. And it's that type of platform of establishing this opportunity to look back through that prism allows us, the viewer, to then examine the lives of the other people that we had met in the Last Picture Show, but now we are meeting again in Texasville. And we see just how the course of history and the course of years and time has treated them. Some of them may be better than others, but even those who might, quote unquote, be in a, quote unquote, better or more financially stable station in life do have their own issues to deal with. My goodness. And let's bring up as an example, which is revealed early on in the film, Randy Quaid's character as an example. My goodness, the things that his character finds himself in at the start of the film and as they progress. Wow. And talk about this idea of both crises on a financial, professional level and on a personal level. And it's right there. And you think back to about where he was when we last left the Last Picture Show versus where he is now. It's an interesting, little a game that one can play in one's imagination. Just what occurred in their lives to have led them from where they were in the Last Picture Show to where they are in Texasville. So that's definitely the case. That's a great example for Randy Quaid's character. It's also true for many of the other characters as well. Timothy Bottoms as well. Sonny, where he was at the in terms of Last Picture Show versus where he is now. My goodness, what a trajectory this is. And so that also forms, I think, one of the plots or subplots in terms of how Dwayne and how the other characters are viewing Sonny and his position in this community now, which is also many years after the fact, many new faces, many new concerns and ideas. Younger generations now are also being involved. And so this brings into the idea of generation shifts and generational gaps that we had seen in the Last Picture Show, now shifted one level up in a manner of speaking, because now the younger generation from the Last Picture Show are now in the maybe the sort of the older adult generation that their older generation in the Last Picture Show were in. So they are now in this so-called, say, the generational position that, say, a character like Ellen Burstyn's character in the Last Picture Show was in. So that's an interesting shift, and to see how they view the world and their relationships vis-a-vis the younger generation. This is very true of Dwayne and how he views a certain member of the younger generation, and the sexual escapades that also seem to be mirroring his choices, Dwayne's choices choices as we've come to know him in the world of Texasville. My goodness, this type of parallelism turning itself on its face, but also creating a sense of irony and also distance, but also the ability to question as well as to revisit the past. This is, I think, the stuff that makes Texasville such a beautiful experience indeed. And when we get to some of those real moments of heartbreak, and when you get to those moments of secrets, also there's that thing about you haven't seen someone that you knew someone so well many years ago, and then you don't see them again, but then until many years after the fact. And so that feeling of meeting someone again after so many years of not knowing them, there's that moment of awkwardness and that feeling of what do I say, and just kind of do I pick up the feelings like I last left them, whatever it was 10, 20, 30 years ago, or do I try to adopt something? It's that type of awkwardness that's also very much part of, I mean, one of the most beautiful scenes is this happens early on, a type of reunion scene between Dwayne and JC, and it happens very subtly, and it just happens almost out of the blue, but what the characters say to each other. It's like meeting old friends and yet not knowing a thing about what the other has gone through. It's that type of awkwardness, which I think is so apropos human life, which it's really beautiful. And too, where these characters, where we learn as the story progresses, where JC has come from and where she is now in her station in life, and then also what has happened to her and how that affects her relationship, not just with Dwayne's character, but also with Dwayne's family and the younger generation, the children. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. And that creates its own sense of a newly formed community, in a manner of speaking, which is not unlike the type of formed communities that we saw in the earlier film Last Picture Show, but it has its own flavor and tenor in Texasville. And it also allows for the opportunity to examine and wonder and ponder what could have been vis-a-vis this person that I was intimately involved with many years ago. That's the Dwayne perspective, I think, vis-a-vis the Sybil Shepherd character. What could have been versus what it is my heart is really seeking. And if the characters are able to find that distinction or to find the answers, that is a very powerful moment indeed. And so I want to just suggest just how much of those moments, at least potentially anyway, because you have to watch the film in order to figure out or to find out whether indeed those are fulfilled or not, but how much of that is there potentially in a watch and view of Texasville. It is a beautiful achievement, absolutely beautiful achievement, and I'm so thrilled that is there. And also too, I mentioned before about the Last Picture Show, about how there's so much of the personal conflict and love and emotion of the filmmakers and the actors and the crew and Peter Bogdanovich, and there's so much of the personal that is infused in a Last Picture Show because of what happened to them in their lives as they were making this. Just imagine the feelings of the people when they're making Texasville, right? And just the what it is that they must have been experiencing, and looking back and working with these people that they knew professionally but maybe they hadn't seen in a while, people that they were intimately involved with but no longer are in those sorts of relationships, but now they're meeting again. I think one of the most famous of examples of this is Sybil Shepherd and Peter Bogdanovich's relationship, which now is in a different situation than where it was in 1971, but they are now working together again. And to have that sense of context when thinking about the story of JC and Dwayne as an example, my goodness, this is utterly mind-blowing. It makes the viewing of Texasville that so absorbing and so heartbreaking an experience. And it also allows too for this entry point into, my life, my own personal life isn't exactly like Dwayne's, or it's not exactly like JC's, or it's not exactly like Sonny's example. But there are those moments where I can be allowed to examine moments in my life which might not necessarily be so distant from those experienced by Dwayne and JC and others in this film. So it allows for that type of entryway into memory and regret, and people that I knew but I don't know anymore, and maybe what would happen if I met these people again. It's that type of beauty and power that's wrapped in this great thing, which is Texasville. This is such a great film to have. Of course, it's a great companion piece to Last Picture Show. It, I think, stands on its own 2 feet so strongly. It's so funny and witty in some places, and then it becomes very heartwarming and tragic, and a very gut wrenching in other places. And I think that's just a reflection of the greatness of the human heart that is mapped and reflected in this wonderful film, which is Texasville. So, as mentioned previously, this release of The Last Picture Show includes on its second Blu-ray disc the film Texasville. And the film Texasville is offered in two distinct versions: the director's cut, which is up first, and then the theatrical cut. And there is a running time difference here. The theatrical cut, by my count, runs at 2 hours and 5 minutes or so, and the director's cut runs at 2 hours and 30 minutes. And so, and the other market difference is the theatrical cut is shown in color, whereas the director's cut is in black and white. Now, I think up to recently, I had primarily known Texasville in its color version theatrical cut offering, because this was the version that I had seen many, many years ago. And so on a kind of rental, actually, with my mother. But this was, and I must admit, I don't know if I had responded to the film Texasville as strongly as I do right now. But the director's cut for Texasville, for me, I think is my preferred version. I think it's beautiful. I think that I love the black and white nature of the photography here, because what it does is, at least to my eyes, is it reminds me too of, first of all, the black and white photography of The Last Picture Show. There's a type of continuity on a visual scale. But it's an interesting thing, because when I saw the film Texasville, it was around the time, it was contemporaneous to its release, so it was in the 90s. And so it felt like a film that was made, most recently or most currently, and so a recent release in a manner of speaking. So, in that way, it and it was very common, I think, to have films in color. And so, not that there weren't any black and white films, of course, but I think in terms of this kind of wide release in U.S. markets, etc., with people who by that time, were really huge and big names, Jeff Bridges and Sybil Shepherd, etc. So, I think for me, and I think also in my own station in life, I was fairly young. I wasn't quite an adult yet. I wasn't married yet, etc. So I was in a very, very young place in my own life, relatively speaking. And so maybe when I was watching it on those terms, I wasn't really responding to it as much as I do now. Now, watching it in the black and white director's cut version, which has a little bit of extra stuff in it, and also watching it with this idea of looking back, because it's no longer a film that was made very recently. It's a film that was made in the early 1990s, released in 1990. So that's already, 10, 20, what is that, 30 years or so since it was made, or since it was released. So this is a film that one watches now looking back, much like one watches Last Picture Show looking back. And so that act of looking back makes it, I think, a really powerful, really, really powerful experience. So it's a film in the present, but also when watching it, you're looking back at the same time. And so I think that quality, combined with the black and white photography, makes for some very compelling viewing, which is why I think I'm responding to it so highly, and more, with more passion than perhaps I had responded to it way back in the day when I was much younger. So, and also I can understand too, because now I'm older and I'm looking back on my own life in a manner of speaking. Not, again, my life is not exactly like JC's or like Dwayne's, etc. But again, it allows for that entryway into the aspect of looking back and regrets and the like. So, and in fact, it's interesting. Peter Bogdanovich does make reference to Frank Sinatra and My Way and regrets. I had a few when speaking about the contemporary feelings that he has. So, in any event, I just bring this up because I think that Texasville, revisiting it in the theatrical cut, is great and amazing. But I think for me, it's the director's cut which will be my go-to when watching things. So to have both of them available now, back to back, side by side in this way, I think is phenomenal. It's phenomenal. It also begs the question to me whether, again, I'm revisiting in my head, whether it would have been cool as well to have had both versions of the Last Picture Show available, because as we know, it's only the quote unquote only the director's version, which is great as well, but would have been interesting to have the theatrical cut side by side of the Last Picture Show, much like we have both versions of Texasville. That's an interesting question, but perhaps now that by comparison, we have this availability of Texasville, that makes me even more curious about what could have been in terms of the Criterion's inclusion of the theatrical cut of Last Picture Show. But in any event, as far as Texasville is concerned, you have your choice. You have your choice. And each version, it has its own merits. Watching it in the color theatrical cut version, let me point out, is still great. It's really great. And again, revisiting it in this way also has this feeling of distance from the earlier work. I mean, it's one thing to watch Texasville in black and white, which has a sort of similar kinship with the Last Picture Show, but there's also something to be said about watching it in color, because it does provide that distance. And one of the things that's really powerful and considering Texasville is not only the closeness with the Last Picture Show, but also the distance from the Last Picture Show. And it's that distance that reflects a sense of memory and remembrance. And the further distance one has in terms of the context of remembrance, I think the more longing and also the more chances of, say, forgetting something, which, little details that one might forget, again, in the grand scheme of a human endeavor, human living, could go a long way. And so it's just the little things that I think make for such poignancy. So I think the fact that you have both choices here at the end of the day is top notch. It's top of the pops, amazing stuff. So two versions here. And then we have the supplements. Now the supplements are included here. There's the introduction, which is 4 minutes. It says introduction, but it's more like excerpts of interviews with various people that are talking a little bit about their experiences with Texasville, such as wardrobe and costuming choices for Jeff Bridges and also Peter Bogdanovich, etc. So it's not really an introduction per se into what these versions are necessarily, but it's just talking about Texasville. But that doesn't make it any less compelling. So it is called introduction here. So this is approximately 4 minutes. And it says here, let me read here. This introduction to the director's cut of Texasville, produced for a 1992 Laserdisc release, features director Peter Bogdanovich and actors Jeff Bridges and Sybil Shepherd. That's great. 4 minutes, approximately. Next, we have Picture This. So this is the documentary that we had seen a good chunk of, about 40 minutes or so, for the Last Picture Show Blu-ray supplement. But now we have it again here. It says, in 2007, George Hickenlooper edited a version of his 1991 film Picture This, The Times of Peter Bogdanovich in Archer City, Texas, for the Criterion Collection DVD and Blu-ray releases of The Last Picture Show. Included here is the final chapter of his original documentary, which focuses on Bogdanovich's Texasville. So what we have is the Texasville portion of this material. Picture This. So it's, again, this is approximately 16 minutes. This is so great. We get more discussions from Sybil Shepherd, Timothy Bottoms, Jeff Bridges, Peter Bogdanovich, talking again about, and some of the participants who are the residents of Archer City. Also talking too about where they were, where they are in their lives now that they're making Texasville, and how their lives, a lot of regret, a lot of tragedy happened with Peter Bogdanovich and what happened in terms of his relationships with Dorothy Stratton. Very, very personal tragedy that is referred to here as well. The phrase here, life has a way of getting out of hand. My goodness. And also there's a phrase here, how have things remained the same, or are they different? And the phrase that's mentioned here by one of the participants is, it's pretty much the same except more so. So I think that's great. This is, again, a reflection of looking back, remembrance, regrets, I had a few, but people are trying to move on or trying to reckon with who they are and where they are right now. And so this is yet another reminder of things in front of the camera in the context of Texasville, also reflecting or having ongoing dialogues and conversations with aspects behind the camera as well. So very powerful stuff indeed. And if you think too, and I don't want to get into too many details about Texasville, again, for the benefit of those who haven't seen this great film yet, but very, very generally, there are character developments that involve personal loss and tragedy in the context of Texasville. And when we think about those story beats, and then we're reminded of how a lot of personal loss has occurred to a number of the participants and the creators of the film, including Peter Bogdanovich, and he acknowledges this himself, that creates a kind of resonance which echoes even more profoundly, I think. Wow. So this extra picture, this is a kind of ongoing segment, which is a great continuation from what we had seen in the last picture show supplement. What we get here is great. So it's Texasville centric, so please check it out if you can. And then we have the trailer to round out the supplements included with Texasville, the Blu-ray. So no commentary track or anything like that. It would have been interesting to see maybe a new 2023 supplement created, maybe about Texasville, maybe a reappraisal or reassessment of Texasville, because Texasville at the time of its release wasn't as, say, critically regarded as, say, the release of the last picture show. Although we do get a writing in the booklet, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the context of Texasville. So I would say, too, that it would have been, I think, a really great candidate to have its own spine number, Texasville, to have maybe this be a double feature, double spine numbered release. Last picture show being one spine number and the Texasville being another spine number. I think that would have been really great. Again, I don't know. I'm not in the Criterion offices. I don't know the details surrounding what materials may be available, what is available in terms of budget and restoration processes and whatnot, what supplements may or may not be available at the time. So these and other decisions may have been in the process. I'm only speculating, but at the end of the day, I think it would have been a very great gesture to have had Texasville as its own standalone spine number. But also at the end of the day, that I think is a very minor point, relatively speaking, especially when we consider that we have the film and various versions of the film Texasville included for purposes of this great release from Criterion. So please check it out if you can. And now let us conclude our discussions of this wonderful release from Criterion, this re-release of the film The Last Picture Show, plus Texasville, with a quick discussion of the packaging and presentation details thereof, and also the great stapled booklet, the robust stapled booklet with many pages. So first of all, just about the packaging. This is, I think, a different look. It is similar in style to what we had seen in this previous Blu-ray release from Criterion from several years back with the ticket motif, which is also repeated here. Just note, however, that in the earlier Blu-ray release, obviously there wasn't the inclusion of the words plus Texasville, although we have it here because of this new release and the inclusion of Texasville thereof. There's also the reliance on this moment from the film, The Last Picture Show, which I really enjoy as well. So there's a nice recall. This is a very key moment, I think, both professionally and also, it's in terms of the story of the film. So I like that, and I should just point out very quickly the art credits here. It says art director Sarah Habibi, Eric Skillman, designer F. Ron Miller, art production coordinator William Braze, and art assistant Julie Sussman, and menu animation Daniel Monroe. So it has that interesting motif. And just note too the way in which the Last Picture Show motif is repeated in that way. It is slightly different when you look at the back of the earlier Blu-ray release. If you note that there's a kind of difference in the font use in the earlier Blu-ray release, whereas here in the back, the use of the font is, I think, consistent with how it looks on the front. So I like either choice, but I note that difference here for this new 4K UHD 2023 release. I'm taken with it a lot. Then we go to the booklet, and I should point out too that the earlier box set, the America Lost and Found BBS story box set, had a number of films, and it was epic, and it had a huge booklet because it had not one but actually a number of films that were being spoken about in this America Lost and Found set. One of the essays in this earlier box set booklet is an essay on the Last Picture Show, and this is the Graham Fuller essay, which is called In With the Old. And in fact, the In With the Old essay does appear again in this form in the new booklet, or the new booklet for the new 2023 release. So it is a great essay. Once again, please watch the film The Last Picture Show first, and then you can read the Graham Fuller essay, which is then carried over. But that's not all, because we also get another writing, which is actually an interview with Peter Bogdanovich by Peter Get. And this is an interview talking about Texasville. It's called Texasville Reconsidered, an interview with Peter Bogdanovich. What I love is they go into some detail about the differences between the director's cut and the theatrical cut, and what those differences were, and how those differences actually help to establish more of a connection, according to Peter Bogdanovich anyway, more of a connection with the Last Picture Show. And so this is really great. It says the conversation that follows taken from Picturing Peter Bogdanovich. So this is really wonderful. And I think what's wonderful too is that, again, thinking back on this film, it's so important. It is really important in terms not just of the story of the people that we meet in the Last Picture Show, but also in the story of Peter Bogdanovich's own life and the life of people around him. So I think this interview, as well as the inclusion of Texasville itself, I think paves the way for this type of, for lack of a better phrase, this type of reassessment. I really want to say that this interview and the film itself, just utterly divine. So I'm very happy with this. Once again, my strong suggestion is first watch the film Texasville, and then you can read the great interview. And I would think maybe if you're interested, if you want to watch both versions first, then that will maybe also be helpful, because the interview does go into differences between the versions. So in case you're interested, but please check out this great interview. It's definitely worth it. So that's another edition that we have, courtesy of this new 2023 release from Criterion. And I should point out, last but not least, it is in this plastic casing. It is 3 discs, 2 Blu-ray discs and 1 4K UHD for the reasons that I cited. And then we have the booklet that goes in like this, and it closes in this plastic casing. I'm okay with plastic casing. I'm also okay with digipack releases. So it would have been interesting to see this in a digipack release. But at the end of the day, I'm fine with this. It's great. I should point out too, I forgot to mention, I love the details of the here we go. See, there we go. The little details in terms of how the discs look. So the lettering, etc. So very cool stuff indeed. I have the Blu-ray on this side. I have the Blu-ray on top, and then the 4K disc underneath. That's just because of the way it's, I shuffled it in terms of my presentation video today. I think the 4K, I think customarily goes on top, and then the Blu-ray underneath. But again, it depends on what your choice is as well. But I don't think there's any rule that sets forth what discs should go where. But as long as you can find it at the end of the day. But in any event, my dear friends, that constitutes, I think, my 2 cents when it comes to this Criterion release this year, 2023. This epic release, or re-release of the Last Picture Show, but also the new release of Texasville. So I like it. I like it a lot. So I hope you do too, my dear friends. So, that's it for now. Let me end it here. Thank you very much for allowing me a little bit of your time today. I very much appreciate it. And so until the next video, my dear friends, please continue to be happy and healthy and well. And please keep on watching a lot of great movies like The Last Picture Show, like Texasville, and other films in the Criterion Collection and beyond. So until the next video, my dear friends, stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.